UFC 320 Ankalaev versus Pereira 2 takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Veronica Hardy versus Brogan Walker. This card is going to get really good, but there's a few of these. I'm going to go with Veronica Hardy to start this off. I think she is just a decently well-trained, very technical women's fighter. The problem that she has, and the problem, unfortunately, that she's always going to have, is that she's quite feminine, and that doesn't work in women's MMA typically. It really is, on average, the worst base for women's MMA. So I don't think Veronica Hardy is ever going to be some kind of prospect that's going to go on and become something special. She was on a 3-fight win streak before her last fight against that woman that is really strong and physical to prove a point. I can't even remember her name. I think Eduarda Mora is her name, and she was able to sort of out-physicality Veronica Hardy just by being more masculine in certain moments. But Veronica Hardy is probably one of the more fundamentally sound, well-trained women's fighters in the unranked region of women's flyweight. And I think she will be able to get past a Brogan Walker, who lost to Juliana Miller, who lost to Yasmin Lucindo very clearly as well. There hasn't been anything in Brogan Walker's game that has proven to me that she is going to win this fight. Now, her nickname is The Bear. So I've said Veronica Hardy has had problems with physicality before, and now she's coming up against a female fighter that's nickname is The Bear, which is really interesting. But I'm going to go Veronica Hardy. She was on a 3-fight win streak before this. A lot of those fights were competitive, but a lot of those fights she won against people that were more physical than her. You know, Jamie Lynn Horth is a larger woman that's more physical and tries to out-muscle fighters, but Veronica Hardy's very technical, good with her kicks on the outside, decent submission game off of bottom position if it does end up there as well. So I think she's got a massive finishing potential advantage over Brogan Walker when it comes to the submissions. And I think there is a aspect, I see this as a 29-28 close decision. It's a classic women's MMA fight outside the rankings, 29-28. And I'm going to go towards Veronica Hardy because I think there is something to be said about when it is close in women's MMA, they do start to look at technicality. You know, when they see that. When they see that a woman's doing really nice, snappy kicks to the body and leg, even if it does come down to, well, who really did more damage, I think they're going to look at the cleanliness and the ability of Hardy in what probably will turn out to be a close, competitive 29-28 decision. I'm going to go with Veronica Hardy to start off the card. We move on to another fight on the card. But before we do that, this video is sponsored by prizepicks.com. Go to prizepicks.com and use code GURU. Very important to use code GURU. And new users, if they use code GURU, can play $5 to get $50 instantly in lineups using code GURU when you sign up. And what I'm going to do this week is, I'm going to go through them right now for you guys. I've got Khalil Rountree to land more than 38.5 significant strikes. I think that's going to be a bit of a scrap. So I think he's going to land more than 38.5 significant strikes. I'm also going to say that Merab Dvalishvili is going to fight for more than 3.5 total rounds. I think that's pretty reasonable. I'm also going to go with Josh Emmett landing less than 41.5 significant strikes, because I think if he does land more than that, or if he lands anywhere near to that, the fight's probably going to be over anyway. So that's what I'm going to go with. Those are the three that I've picked out this time. Use code GURU at prizepicks.com. We move back to the rest of the predictions here. Moving on. Up the card, Ramiz Brahimaj versus Austin Vanderford. I'm going to go with Austin Vanderford. This is one of the fights that a few people are a little bit all over the place on. Okay? This is one of the few that there is no sort of unanimous consensus opinion on here. I'm going to go towards Austin Vanderford. I think he's a little bit too physical for Ramiz Brahimaj. He's a big dude for the division. He's competed at middleweight before. He's a large wrestler. And with Ramiz Brahimaj, he has these moments where you think, wow, what a savage. But these moments come against Mickey Gall, you know? And other fighters alike. I know he has some decent wins. He's coming off a submission win over Billy Ray Goff. Where he caught him in a nasty guillotine in that fight. And he does have these moments where you're like, oh God, this guy's a beast. He finished that guy in brutal fashion. But beyond the finishing guys in brutal fashion, which can be done to Vanderford because it's been done before. I've seen the guy KO'd by Gegard Mousasi early in his career. And he's also been beaten before as well by some decent guys outside the UFC. But with Ramiz Brahimaj, there's these moments in between these finishes that he gets against very bottom of the barrel level opponents where he doesn't look all that. Themba Gorimbo was able to really easily out-grapple him to the distance. And Themba Gorimbo is a fighter out of Africa, not known for their fundamental prowess in grappling in any way. I know he's been training in America for a long time. He did a lot of work at MMA Masters with Colby Covington, which is going to bring up that wrestling for sure. But with Ramiz Brahimaj, I don't know, even the Court McGee loss, you know, I really don't think Austin Vanderford, he could have fought any version of Court McGee, and I think he would have beaten him and out-wrestled him and been able to do what he wanted. So there's a couple of fights on Ramiz Brahimaj's record where you're like, wow, this guy's good. But then he fights someone who's like fundamentally sound and well-rounded and like a complete level fighter that's not Mickey Gall or Billy Ray Goff, who's like a tough guy. And you end up thinking, he looked really bad against them. You know, Themba Gorimbo was able to take him down a lot of times. I believe he got like 6 takedowns, 12 minutes of control time in that fight. Really beat up on Brahimaj in the second and third round. He came up against Max Griffin early in his career, and it went really badly for him. If you remember his ear in that fight. Absolute mess, absolute crazy scenes that was in that Max Griffin fight. Then you've got him against Court McGee. And with Austin Vanderford, you know, coming off a win over Veretennikov, who's also on this card that we'll get to. He got a submission on the Contender Series as well, where he got hurt early on, which I actually like the look of. I know it doesn't look good for him to get hurt early on the Contender Series, but he came back through that, you know? And for a guy who I've wondered about, you know, heart, grit, he's got Paige Van Zandt, he's got his sugar mummy, he's got money. I start to wonder, like, is this guy going to dig deep when he needs to? You know, with Paige Van Zandt at home and who knows what they're recording. You know what I mean? To get some extra money on the side. I don't know what's going down, but you do start to think, okay, this guy's not a young, hungry, broke, starving fighter. But when I saw him come back through that knockdown on the Contender Series and still score that submission in round 2, I thought, yeah, his grappling is good. He's tenacious. He's a bull. He's tough. I think he's going to be able to muscle around Brahimaj as this fight goes on. And I think he knows he's not invincible on the feet when it comes to his chin. And he's learned that lesson. So I don't see him getting too wild with Brahimaj early on. I see this fight progressing. And if it does get past the first round, I think the odds should skyrocket in favor of Austin Vanderford. So I'm going to go for Austin Vanderford because I think if we do leave that first round, he will start to take over as Themba Gorimbo did when he just dominated round 2 and 3 against Brahimaj, as other fighters have done against Brahimaj as well. So I like Brahimaj, but Vanderford's bigger, stronger, I think better trained. You know what I mean? He's learned lessons against good comp, and now he's on a bit of a run. I'm going to go with Austin If Ramiz Brahimaj wins, it will be like, okay, now he's some prospect we have to look out for. Whereas Austin Vanderford seems like right now that he might be a prospect to look out for. So I feel like this is on Brahimaj to prove us wrong on our perceptions of him, whereas it's on Vanderford to just sort of maintain the perceptions that we have. So I'm going to go with Austin Vanderford getting this one done. And I'm actually going to say that he gets this done by decision over Ramiz Brahimaj. We move on to another fight up the card, which is Punahele Soriano versus Nikolay Veretennikov. This is a no-brainer to me. I'm actually pretty confident in this one. I'm going to go with Punahele Soriano. I think a lot of people agree with me here. Veretennikov is good. Why is he above Vanderford if he lost to him? They just did. Ivan Erslan lost to Navajo Sterling. He's the co-main event while Navajo Sterling's on the prelims. Why is he above him on the card if he lost to him? I know they really like Punahele Soriano. They see some level of promotability in him. And he's an islander. You know, he's a niche ethnicity. The UFC loves niche ethnicities, I feel like, because there's like a niche fan base sort of waiting to be gotten. You know, they would love a fighter who's like, wow, we've got a really odd prospect from like Eritrea or something. Like the UFC would love something like that because it's just another country that's going to tune in. And we see what happens when, you know, they have a whole city out to watch the fight on the big screen. It gets going. So I think that's what they're kind of doing with Punahele Soriano. They want that islander representation because once Holloway's gone, Who knows? But let's talk about the fight itself. I'm going to go with Punahele Soriano because in the fight with Nikolay Veretennikov and Francisco Prado, I believe Prado was like a slight favorite going into it, and a lot of people were picking him to win. And I took Veretennikov because I thought he's more well-rounded than Prado, and Prado's too short and stubby to get to him. I was wrong, but he still won. So I was correct in my prediction, but I was wrong in the fact that Prado couldn't get to him. I was wrong in the fact that Prado was going to be too short and stubby. Now, someone who fights incredibly similar to Francisco Prado is Punahele Soriano. Bruisers, head down, bobbing and weaving, Tysons of their division. I think Francisco Prado is called something like the Argentinian Tyson or something along those lines. And Punahele Soriano has that similar style. We've seen him knock out guys, put him out. He just put out Uros Medic really badly, and I thought that's a good look. Uros Medic is well-trained. I think Uros Medic and Veretennikov would go to like a very competitive decision that maybe Medic could win. And Punahele put him out badly. And Punahele's made a career out of doing this, you know. Loses some to like some bigger dudes in the middleweight division, gets out grappled here and there by like a Maximov, who's the guy who Diaz says, yo, fight my boy. And then he went, yeah, that's that guy. Managed to out-grapple Soriano, but Soriano still put a hurt on him, and there's some controversy around the decision of that fight. But he's a very tough, dangerous, power-heavy unit, and I think Veretennikov is very up on his toes, and he doesn't control distance very well. Saw that in the Prado fight, where he was doing a lot of smart things to win, but it took too much for me. That's what I think. I think it took too much out of Veretennikov to pull it off against what I consider a smaller, less dangerous version of Punahele Soriano, who isn't as powerful, who isn't as strong, who isn't as dangerous and explosive, and hasn't got as much presence in the cage. And it took a lot out of Veretennikov to scoot that by on him. You know, I mean, I know Veretennikov's had a close one with Morales, but I feel like the Burns performance is kind of changing people's perceptions of who Morales is. I know he got past Magny as well with that spinning elbow, and he caught him in the clinch with it, and it was a kind of interesting situation. But, you know, Morales has had a competitive decision with Jake Matthews, who's also decent, don't get me wrong, but you know what I'm saying here. I just feel like Veretennikov, there's things that can be done against him if you put it on him. And I feel like Punahele Soriano is the bruiser, the bruising machine that's going to be able to put it on him full steam ahead and catch him with those shots. Veretennikov stands very tall and goes up on one leg so much. He's very heavy on his back foot, and his back foot is very under him. So he's very upright. Against a guy like Punahele Soriano closing the distance, you don't want to be upright like that. I need a bladed stance. I need you low. I need you trying to catch him coming in. But he's very up and like crowd and put his hands in the way. And it just reeks of a recipe of a first round KO for Punahele Soriano. So I'm going to go with Punahele Soriano, first round KO over Nikolay Veretennikov. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Patchy Mix versus Jakub Wiklacz. He's actually Polish, so the opposite of this picture, in a way. But I'm going to go with Patchy Mix. I know a lot of people have been saying, are you actually going to go with Patchy Mix again? Because he got a lot of shit for his performance against Mario Batista. I rewatched the Mario Batista fight, and let me tell you, based on the hype that we had for Patchy Mix, where he was talking about, look at his legs. Jesus Christ, what an odd build. Wow, his legs are small. Sorry. Wow, what the fuck? This guy's literally held up on fucking toothpicks. That is insane. But either way, what am I saying? There was this hype on Patchy Mix that he was going to go on and give Merab problems. You know, and oh, dude, this guy is here to stay. And watch out, O'Malley. Watch out, Peter Yan. It's Patchy Mix. And once he gets through Mario Batista, you're all in trouble. So because of the perception we gave Patchy Mix, his loss seemed all that much worse. Whereas if there was never that hype, I saw the edits. We've all seen the edits. We all saw those edits people were making as he was listing off his resume. He does have great wins outside the UFC. He is a top-ish level I think he'll be ranked. I think he will float in the 10 to 15 range of the rankings. I think he is at that above Daniel Marcos level. I think he's at that Montel Jackson at our level of bantamweight, to use for lack of better terms. He's at that sort of region of the sport. You know, I think he would beat Ricky Simone. I think he would get past he wouldn't be fraud checked by Raoni Barcelos, you know? So I think Patchy Mix is better than we give him credit for, but because the expectation of him was so high, we really undermined him as a consequence. When in reality, he had a decent third round against Mario Batista. First 2 rounds, he looked stiff as hell, and he always has done. But he never made that adjustment, and he never found that movement. Mario Batista moved very well around him. But for Jakub Wiklacz, you're talking about a guy, Mario Batista, that had been in there with Aldo. He'd had experience. He'd been under the UFC's bright lights, whereas Patchy Mix hadn't. And Jakub Wiklacz is also going to have that same feeling. He's up there against a big name in Patchy Mix, biggest fight of his career, fighting out at KSW, first time in the UFC. Is this going to be a guy so comfortable that Patchy Mix again looks stiff in comparison? No. I think we're going to see a finish here from Patchy Mix, and I think he's going to catch a guillotine. I think he's going to catch a guillotine on you. I never like picking guillotines. They don't work in high-level MMA, but I don't think Jakub Wiklacz is that high-level MMA. There are better prospects out of KSW. There are better fighters. He is on a streak. He is promotable. He's got the genes for it. He's Polish, you know what I mean? So there is always that. Like, they're typically decent at fighting. But I've seen his regional fights. He was never on my radar before this fight. I know he's been winning, and he's lost some fights, and I think he's got a record of something like 13-4 or like 16-4 or 16-3. Like, he's got a few losses in his career on the regional scene, but he was never on my radar like a Lucien Keita was. We all knew about Lucien Keita. You know, we knew about him. He was like, oh, there's this guy, Lucien Keita, he's running through people. I remember Lucien Keita breaking his foot in a fight, having the foot injury, and then being like, oh, that sucks. Well, we're going to see him again in a few years' time once he gets back on track. Like, I've known about him. Jakub was never on my radar. I'm going to go with Patchy Mix. I don't think this is some really great prospect that's going to be able to topple Patchy Mix. And I think Patchy Mix will get this one done by submission. He might catch him with a knee. He might start to have some success on the feet. Maybe Jakub will shoot in out of panic. First time in the UFC. Guillotines in. Patchy Mix gets a win. Everybody said this about me and I'm here. I'm ready to go. Starts calling out some guys in the lower regions of the rankings. I reckon Patchy Mix has got this one in the bag. He is really good. He beat Magomedov. He beat guys that fought Peter Yan, and which I think is the Magomedov, Magomedov, I think his name is. I think that was all one name that I just did there throughout all of that stuttering. But yeah, he's fought guys that Yan came up against, had really tough matchups against. You know, he's fought really good Raytheon Stotts, and these are capable fighters. They really are capable fighters, and Mix did beat him, so I'm not going to diminish him that bad. I'm going with him by finish here, and I'm actually going to take it in the first round. I think it's going to happen. He's going to have a y'all must have forgot, even though you didn't really remember in the first place kind of performance. We move on. Up the card to another fight. Macy Chiasson versus Yana Santos. Yeah, I'm going with Macy Chiasson. I'm looking at the Irene Aldana fight. I know Yana Santos is pretty underrated, honestly, and sometimes she can put on good performances. You know, she beat Miesha Tate, but what am I talking about here, bruv? Miesha Tate hasn't fought in like 5 years before that, so there's just nothing really logical to go off of to say that Yana Santos wins. There's no like logical argument I can make. I don't know if you know about the Benoit Saint-Denis Beneil Dariush fight, but it's one of them where I'm just like, I don't know what argument to make here. But in a different way, where there's a lot of substance in Benoit Saint-Denis and Beneil Dariush, but for this, there's just nothing. Yana Santos had some good fights. She's had some good wins. She's tenacious. She's a tough Russian woman. Brutal they are, especially in divorce courts, as they say. Not speaking from experience, but watch out, Tiago. You know what I mean? Don't want to upset her too bad. But Macy Chiasson, I reckon, will get this one done. She's pretty good, you know. She's all right. You know, the Norma Jamont performance. I think Norma Jamont, not for my own personal bias, I think Norma Jamont's really good for a women's bantamweight. I think that Irene Aldana is like top 10 level for a women's bantamweight. And Chiasson was on her way to beating her. She was on her way to sort of overcrowding her and getting the better of her with pressure and stuff like that. And then she got heel kicked in the liver in that fight. Really odd situation. So I'm going to go with Macy Chiasson. Plus, she has a physicality advantage here. Yana Santos is not 5'6", but I'll show you some of these stats here. And in women's MMA, these do matter. She's not 5'6", but she's given up reach. She's given up leg reach. She's given up a lot of height. I think she's 5'8", 5'7". I think Macy Chiasson's probably 5'10.5", something like that. So she's going to be bigger. She's going to be taller in the clinch. I think she'll be able to hold her up against the cage in moments and wrestle a little bit. She's a well-rounded woman, and look at her. You know? I said femininity was like the worst base for MMA just earlier on the Veronica Hardy fight. You're looking at the best base. So I'm going to go with Macy Chiasson getting this one done. And I'm going to say she wins a 29-28 decision. Maybe losing the first round, but winning the last two. We move on up the card to another fight on the prelims. Daniel Santos versus Joosang. This one's interesting, right? This is the Korean Tyson. Nasty fighter. He's got a lot of hype out of South Korea. I am going to pick him to beat Daniel Santos. I think he's got the build for it. I think he's got the twitch muscle for it. I will say his regional career did look really yucky, but his KO in his debut was nothing short of spectacular over Jekasarigi, who's terrible. Daniel Santos is good, and his grappling has improved. His grappling has improved in his recent fights. I remember a fight with him and John Castaneda, and it was a great fight, but he was getting his ass whooped early on in that fight. Now, the problem with Daniel Santos is he doesn't fight often enough for me to really get a grasp of where he's actually at in his career, because every time he fights, a year and a half has gone by. A year and a half has gone by every time this guy fights. And I find myself thinking, well, what version of this is he? Is he improved? Has he become a night and day different fighter? I don't know. It's hard to tell due to his inactivity. Because that fight, I believe 3 fights ago against Castaneda was in 2022. We're in 2025. So, but I've seen in his fights, Johnny Munoz is a non-fighter, not capable of causing harm to another human, jiu-jitsu based. This is typically the case. And he managed to beat him. I managed to outdo him and even managed to out-grapple him as well. His last fight, he used a lot of grappling as well. I think he got 5 takedowns out of 16. Can't remember the guy's name. It was another Korean. It was Ju Young Kim or something. Ju Young Kim or Ju Young Song. One of those combinations of Korean noises that their names all seem to be in pairs of 3. Jung Young Ho or Jung Young Kim, something along those lines was the guy, the Korean Tiger. He actually beat the guy by using grappling, shot 5 takedowns out of 16, managed to get them, mixed it up a little bit, also did good on the feet against the guy, but was getting cracked in the first round again. And he is a bit of, and people said this back in the day when he fought John Castaneda. The hardcores were saying, it's the next Oliveira, it's bantamweight Oliveira. He's now at featherweight, of course, he moved up. But at the time, it was like, this is bantamweight Oliveira, you know? This is another guy who gets knocked down but keeps coming forward. And against a guy who's a sniper on the back foot, like Joosang. I don't like Daniel Santos' game here. Maybe he could expose the grappling of Joosang. There's a good chance of that. But I think being a little undersized here by moving up from bantamweight isn't the best for me to say, oh, he's just going to out-grapple the guy. So that sort of diminishes that argument for him just a tad. Not much, you know, lighter man skill and all, but just a tad. I'm going to go against Daniel Santos. He's too easily hit as he closes the distance. High and tight guard, brings his hands away from his face to throw shots. Very open to hooks on the back foot. And look at what Joosang did in his debut with hooks on the back foot. Flatline KO, nasty shot. Really, really perfect counter left hook. It went viral for a reason. So I'm going to believe in Joosang, and I would imagine in Korea, they're really rallying behind this guy. It's like they need some Asian representation. There's literally billions of them. There's barely any of them in combat sports. They've got some guy here, a little bit of a McGregor factor to him over there. He's already got a big following in Korea, so I think they're putting a lot behind him here. They're going to make sure, right, you've got to do this and that and this. So I'm going to go with Joosang getting this one done. I reckon he chins Daniel Santos in round 1. I'm going with another first round KO for Joosang. We move on. Up the card, Chris Gutierrez versus Farid Basharat. Farid Basharat over Chris Gutierrez. Here's the problem, though. You know I love a pick of a 29-28 split decision Chris Gutierrez. They happen all too much. But Farid's better than Javid. He is. Javid's probably a better striker than Farid. But Javid lets fights come to him too much. And for a guy with no power in his shots, I think him and his brother are built very soy. Okay? Javid Basharat especially has got a head. He's built like a Khajiit from Skyrim. You know what I mean? Just head way too big for the rest of his feminine body. And eventually got chinned by Ricky Simone in his last fight. And he's had other moments as well where things have got a bit tricky. And he lets it get very close. But with Farid Basharat, similar build, but a little bit more chooses where he wants to fight to be. You know, he has more control over the fight when it comes to shooting takedowns and striking on the feet more offensively, you know. And he's on a crazy win streak right now. He beat Victor Hugo. He's beaten Damon Blackshear off of memory. I'll try and remember all of this because I can't click from different screens right now. But yeah, he's gone for a few opponents now, back to back to back, where he's just done enough to beat them, but he's been mixing and grappling on them very well. And I like that. I like the mixing in of the grappling, and I like that against Chris Gutierrez, who, you know, I think John Castaneda's pretty good, but never will be ranked, never will be top 25, will always float in that region of the 25 to 50 range of the bantamweight division. And he made it very close with Chris Gutierrez. And Gutierrez has been getting dropped in fights. And he's been getting held down in fights with no ability to get back up. And how easily Song Yudong just sort of cruise controlled to a win in certain positions. And I don't trust Gutierrez's ability to get back up on the feet. I don't trust his ability to switch anyone off on the feet anymore. I know he caught Frankie Edgar with that knee. And people were like, oh my God, he's a fucking problem. And I think he caught Aori Chweleng with a spinning back kick. Or Dana Batgarel, one of those Asian Mongolian fighters. But yeah, I'm going to go with Farid Basharat getting this one done. I like his offensive grappling. I like how he mixes it up a little bit better than Javid. And he's on a win streak for a reason. Took some time after his last win. Yeah, I'm going to go with Farid Basharat. I think he's all right. He'll lose eventually. I don't think he's so far ahead of these guys that he's now going to go on and be a ranked contender at any point. But he's better than the Gutierrez's of this world. He's more consistent in his wins than the Chris Gutierrez's of this world. So I'm going to go with Farid Basharat getting this one done by 29-28 decision. Yeah, Farid Basharat, 29-28, mixes in the grappling to win, undefeated for a reason, goes to 14-0, loses to anyone with any level of power or finishing ability or strength to stuff takedowns. Probably like a Mario Batista coming off a loss to Umar, or a Montel Jackson coming off a loss at one point, or one of these types of fighters, you know. So I'm going to go with Farid Basharat, 29-28 decision for the win. We move on. Up the card, Edmen Shahbazyan versus Andre Muniz. I'm going with Edmen Shahbazyan here. I think a lot of people are going with Edmen Shahbazyan. He is good. And the problem with Andre Muniz is, I can't remember who he fought in his last fight that he got KO'd really weirdly against, where it didn't even seem like a big shot. Oh, but it was Ikram Aliskerov, who's actually really good. But the way this guy reacts to like big firepower in round one when he can't get his takedown off immediately is very worrying. Now, his grappling is very good, but Edmen Shahbazyan isn't a fighter that can typically be very easily out-grappled until we get into round 2 and 3. I know he lost to Gerald Meerschaert, and there's some losses on his record where you're like, ooh, maybe Muniz could beat him. But the way I see this is, I've seen Anthony Hernandez versus Edmen Shahbazyan. People forget, man. He fucking shucked off Hernandez like nothing in round 1, battered him up, got him down, took mount against him, was smashing him on the ground, nearly had him for a moment, and now Anthony Hernandez grinds up and so gets on the single leg and keeps it going. Eventually, Edmen Shahbazyan fumbles positions and finishing sequences, and Hernandez works his way back into the fight and ends up beating him. But if Muniz can't get what he wants in round 1, which I don't think he can against the talent of Edmen Shahbazyan, who's still young and still improving and trains at a good gym with great sparring partners, one of them being Ankalaev, who's on this very same card. He's got the talent and firepower to make Muniz shit himself once he can't get that takedown in the first and put him away like an Ikram Aliskerov did. So I'm going to go with Edmen Shahbazyan getting this one done. I like his kicks to the body as well on Andre Muniz, who's very open, wide-stanced. I'm going to go with Edmen Shahbazyan getting this one done by TKO in the first round over Andre Muniz, whose last memory was himself being KO'd. So I'm going with Edmen Shahbazyan. And also, Muniz like made dumber decisions than Brendan Allen in grappling sequences in their fight. So that is telling you something. I'm going to go with Edmen Shahbazyan by TKO in the first round. We move on. This sacrifice isn't happening. I like Ateba Gutierrez. Give him an actual fucking talent, man. The last few fights he's got is like, I know you're trying to build this guy up, but like, think of their children. You know? Think of their families. You know, these guys have families that they have to go to. Ozzy Diaz pulled out, thank God. You know what I mean? His kids are probably at home going, you know what I mean? Finally, we get one more Christmas with him, you know what I mean? Stop feeding Gutierrez cans. Please stop feeding him cans. Give him a decent talent. I bet you the next matchup for him is like Cody Brundage has answered the call or something like that. When you have someone like this, there is a responsibility as a promotion to match him up with someone who is not a sacrificial lamb to him. So that's what I think on that. But that fight's not happening. I thought they would maybe call like a Patrick McCrory to see if he flies across. He won on the Contender Series, never got signed. Maybe he would have done it, but I guess they couldn't find someone willing to fight a Gutierrez on 4 days' notice. I'm not surprised. We move on. Abus Magomedov versus Joe Pyfer. Ah, man. I'm going to go with Joe Pyfer, but I'm not happy about it. Low kicks, man. Snappy, fast, low kicks. He's been shown the problem now a few times, Pyfer has. That's why I'm not allowing this, because... Oh, look at the salt in his face. Just take a picture, Joe. You know what I mean? Look at the misery on his face, dude. Look at the sourness, dude. Just taking a real sour cherry. Oh, my God. This is such a representation of who he is. I think Pyfer's got incredibly fundamental flaws in his game on the feet. But Abus gets so sloppy as the fight goes on, and that's where I need him good. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go with Joe Pyfer, and I'm going to say that Pyfer gets this one done in the second round by KO. I've seen Abus really badly hurt by Bruno Ferreira, who is a wild power puncher, but doesn't have the frame and the presence and the setups of a Joe Pyfer. So I'm going to go with Joe Pyfer to get this one by second round KO. I think this leaves the first, and we enter the second round where he will finish. That's the thing with Abus, right? I need him to be able to Hermansson Pyfer, but he doesn't have the cardio and gas tank to get this done in the third. And if he starts looking sloppy, Pyfer will not. Pyfer will push. He's very well conditioned, and he will find that chin later in the fight as it goes on. So you know what? I'm going to say that Abus is actually looking good in moments. Pyfer puts him in some trouble, cracks his nose, stuffs a takedown, gets a takedown of his own. Things like this happen in the first round. Cuts open on Abus. He's a little bit swollen up on one of his eyes. Round 2 comes around. Abus's low kicks are getting to Pyfer a bit, but then I think he's going to get a bit sloppy. And I think Pyfer's going to find that KO blow at the end of round 2. So where I need Abus to be good in this fight in order to expose Pyfer, he's not. I need him to be able to push in that third round. I need him to be able to push in that late second. And by the time a minute and a half goes by, he is shooting panic takedowns. And he is really getting sloppy against Mikel Pereira. If you can't put the pressure on Mikel Pereira in round 3 like Andre fucking Fialho could, I don't think you've got what it takes to exploit Joe Pyfer. And also, Kelvin Gastelum has a chin for the ages. So I'm not going to take Pyfer not finishing him as like a detriment to his career. You know, I've seen Cannonier catch Gastelum flush and not put him away. And I've seen Cannonier put Jack Hermansson out. You know, and I'm going to go with Pyfer. I'm going to go Pyfer here. I'm saying Pyfer gets it done. There will be some trickiness. I don't like his low kick defense or his calf kick defense. Even against, you know, in Hermansson fight, he got exposed about it. Watch his fight with Abdul Razak Al Hassan back. I should have known he would lose to Hermansson. I don't know why, but you see the finishes of Pyfer and you go, whoa, BJ Pyfer, you know, all this hype, you know, turn the body cam off and all this. The salt mines, you know, instead of the sand mines of Ngannou, but he's so open to calf kicks. Even in the Abdul Razak Al Hassan fight, he was getting to him with those low kicks, and Pyfer was taking some funny steps. Started grappling, got the submission. He has layers to his game. He's a developing fighter. He's younger than Abus. He's got less record than Abus. And I know that there's a point where you say, well, Abus is more experienced. But there's a point of diminishing returns, right? Where, sure, Pyfer wasn't experienced when he fought Hermansson, but he's picked it up. He's picked it up. You know, 14-3, 17 pro fights, had amateur fights as well. So I'm going to go with Joe Pyfer getting this one done. Abus isn't good where I need him to be in order to fraud check Joe Pyfer. But they're both going to have a firefight in the first round. I just think Pyfer's been more consistently good at that firefight in round 1. So I'm going to go Pyfer round 2, late round 2 TKO against Abus Magomedov. We move on. Josh Emmett versus Yusuf Zalal. Josh Emmett is very powerful. I'm going to go with Yusuf Zalal to get this one done. And you know what I'm actually going to say? Yusuf Zalal, TKO win. Statement performance. People are talking about the Ilya clip again because he had like 3 punches that he landed in round 3. Because that's what we do now on Twitter. Makhachev fans showing Zalal landed punches on him. Makhachev's been flatlined. I hate this new culture on Twitter where we just point out one person's highlights and say, wow, dude, look what was happening here. Yeah, when you take away anything the other guy does, of course someone's going to look like they're doing good. I hate that fan base, man. They're such a plague on this sport. But either way, Josh Emmett is so basic and easy to figure out. You know what he does. You know what it is. Right overhand, step through with the right foot, left. Oh my God, gee, I nearly took everything down there. That's how wide he throws these overhands. You know what I mean? I only took my microphone out there. Right overhand, step through with the right foot, left overhand with his head sort of tracing the punch as he goes. Like that. That's what Emmett is swimming out there. He's doing a front crawl for 15 minutes. And now and then his jab looks good. And now and again that right overhand does land. And we have these great moments out of Emmett. And he is tough. But he's tough because he knows firepower's coming back his way at times. Okay? And that's a point I want to get across here. Which I'll get to. But you know what that is. Left hook, step through, right overhand, step through the right foot, left overhand. For a guy like Zalal, who is a fun guy, you know what I'm saying? Sure, a nice dude. He seems funny. I think he seems quite promotable. He's got Morocco. You know, the Moroccans are definitely loyal to all their own. You've seen this in kickboxing, Badahari, the lot. They still won't accept he lost to Rico Verhoeven. That's how loyal these fans are. So he's got something there. Zalal's got something there. He'll figure that out. Once that right hand comes, he knows Emmett stepping through to throw the left overhand. He'll figure that out. And the problem with this, and why I'm actually going to take Yusuf Zalal by TKO, is because Emmett expects firepower back his way, so he grits a lot. I reckon in this fight, and I have a weird suspicion in this fight, that Emmett will have moments where he's saying, come on then, as Zalal scoots around on the outside. And he starts to lose respect for Zalal a little bit. And he does this thing where he dips his head as he goes for those shots. And Zalal has a really nasty counter knee up the middle. He caught Jack Shaw with it. And he's caught others with it as well. I can see Josh Emmett getting outpointed in a very boring fight by Yusuf Zalal on the back foot. For the first round. For the second round. Then towards the end of the second and maybe the third, I think Emmett will start sort of losing respect for him whatsoever. Thinking nothing's coming back his way. Zalal times him with a knee up the middle as he throws that first hook. I reckon that's what's going to happen here. So I think that's where the value is. I think a lot of people are picking Zalal to win. Maybe Emmett could grapple with him, but we've seen no sign of any level of control or jiu-jitsu. Emmett's trained for decades and all he's learned is 2 overhands. They deserve NFL pay, by the way. Fucking hell. Yusuf Zalal, I reckon there's value on a TKO win. We'll see how that ages, because Emmett could just catch him and flatline him. But Zalal's too good at that staying out of range game and flicky, picky shots like a pansy. So I'm going to go with Yusuf Zalal getting this one done. And I'm going to say late rounds TKO. Knee up the middle. As Emmett ducks in, gets dropped, finished. This might be the end of Josh Emmett where we say, okay, hang up the gloves, Unk. You know what I mean? We move on. Up the card to another fight. Here we go. Yuri Prochazka versus Khalil Rountree Jr., folks. Oh, my God. Going with Yuri Prochazka. Look at the records, by the way. 31-5. Yuri's had so many fights. 31-5, 15-6 for Khalil. That's nothing to do with why I'm picking Yuri Prochazka to win. The way I see this fight is, and I've rewatched a Jamal Hill fight with Khalil Rountree Jr. I know Khalil looks very good with what he does, and every now and again he goes, whoopee, whoopee, hey, and Joe Rogan's at home going, oh, people forget, oh, God, the Muay Thai, God, look what he did to Jamal Hill. And I get that, but it's Khalil Rountree having full control over something. A patient, very normal fight is unfolding, and Khalil is able to just beat them to the mark. When chaos unfolds, and Khalil loses control of that distance and that I'm faster than you, what's going to happen when he has a glimpse of, oh shit, Yuri's fucking charging towards me against the cage. I'm not Muay Thai-ing this. I'm not inside low kicking this problem away. What's going to happen then? I do worry about Yuri's head movement. There is a world, in my opinion, where we could find out that Yuri's new head movement is actually the problem in this matchup. All of this against a guy shorter than you that wings counter hooks the way Khalil does could see a TKO win. But Khalil isn't a consistent enough finisher. His finishes are brutal, but he's not a switch you off with a punch type finisher. He just isn't. And we have seen time and time again, it takes a different type of power to shut off Yuri Prochazka. I don't know how many times we got to see it. It really does take a different level of power. So I think Yuri needs to stop the this and do more of the this. You know, a little bit more tidy with the head movement than a fucking, like you've flicked him and he's got a spring-based torso. You know what I mean? He needs less of that, like he's on the front of someone's dash cam. You know what I mean? Or dashboard in a car. Just bobbling around all over the place. We need a little bit less of that. And we need a bit more of the sort of like these types of looks from Yuri. Volkan Ozdemir head movement Yuri, but perfected a little better. I think Khalil's going to give him problems in round one. But I'm not confident enough to say that Khalil finishes him in round one by TKO. I'm really not. I don't think he's going to. I think the low kicks could be a problem for Yuri. He's learned to deal with them a little bit better than before. But they have been a problem for him in the first fight with Pereira. And the second fight with Pereira. And even the fight against Alexander Rakic as well. But he tanked through him. And Khalil's not deadening anyone's leg other than Eric Anders, who was still able to push forward and make a fight out of it, even though he got dropped. There's just no sudden, oh, he's out cold finish from Khalil. You know? He's hurt. Even Anthony Smith made it gritty. You got to watch back some of the fights with Khalil. The Jamal Hill fight. I thought Khalil Rountree won, and very clearly he schooled Jamal Hill. But it wasn't the domination and the ass whooping people are saying it was. It's just that Jamal Hill never had a big moment where he shocked Khalil. I think Yuri will have that moment. And when he does, this very patient will come undone. And I reckon that's what we're looking for here. In round 2 or 3, we're looking for Yuri to do that thing that will make Khalil Rountree think, fuck, oh God. You know what I mean? This isn't an easy to control guy. This is a different kind of animal that I'm in here with. And I think that's where Yuri Prochazka can push and break and TKO in the second or third round. So I'm going to say that Yuri Prochazka gets a third round TKO win. And I'm also going to add in something else here. I think he'll take down Khalil. I think he will. I think we can see a situation where he gets dropped by something and ends up shooting in on Khalil. And Khalil starts like hammer fisting and Yuri picks him up and dunks him down and gets on top for a bit and starts punching. And like he did to Dominic Reyes, who's very hard to take down. Very hard to take down, Dominic Reyes. And, you know, he had moments against Glover in the grappling where he would shift position and get the back. I think we're going to see a more well-rounded performance from Yuri. And scar tissue on Khalil's face, his eyes, his nose, the amount that he marks up. Other than Pereira's perfection against Yuri, there are not many guys that make it out of a Yuri fight without looking completely hideous by the end of it and getting severe damage done to him. And with the amount of scar tissue that Alex Pereira gave Khalil, that nose is getting popped. Even if you don't think Yuri wins, and you think that's maybe unlikely here, Khalil's nose gets popped, probably. Khalil's eye gets cut open, probably. His eye swells up, probably. That's what we're looking at here. So I think that's when it will see a late second round or third round TKO finish from Yuri. And that's what I'm going to go for here. Yuri Prochazka, late in the fight, second half, TKO. Great performance. Looks in moments in trouble early. Looks like Khalil might have some control. But then Yuri starts entering the walking forward mode where he's all over Khalil and Khalil's going, oh shit. Do I do an inside low kick or the counter hooks? Both haven't worked. And now I'm covering up and Yuri's going, grabbing my guard, uppercutting hook, knee up the middle. And I think that's where it will change. So I'm going with Yuri Prochazka by TKO late in the fight. We move on. Merab Dvalishvili versus Corey Sandhagen. I need Corey to get a TKO finish and I can't rely on him to do it. Can't rely on him to do it. And Merab has been improving his submission game. I know it's just one submission against O'Malley, but he's clearly working on the submission aspect of his game, the striking aspect of his game moving forward. Even against Umar, you know, people talk about, oh, he aura farmed Umar. He was also ripping rear hooks to the body on Umar so much in that fight. Rear hooks to the body and landing shots upstairs, stinging Umar with a right hand in round 5, and Umar sort of wobbles off to the side and he points at him, and those moments are what won Merab the fight. It wasn't just the aura farming and the takedown. He did have moments where he would crack Umar and Umar would go, oh shit, he's actually caught me with a decent shot there. Even O'Malley thought that, or must have thought that in the rematch, where it's like, holy shit, he's actually tagging me on the feet with good shots. I'm going with Merab. Sandhagen's good. I think he'll do better than O'Malley in the rematch. We're looking at a decision here. 48-47, 49-46 Merab. Sandhagen will take rounds. But Sandhagen leaves it too close. Even against Marlon Vera, a lot of people talk about that decision like the biggest robbery of all time. I implore you to watch back the last 3 rounds. Did I give it to Corey Sandhagen? Yes. But they are close rounds. He was outstriking Marlon Vera, but he does so little with his striking. So little damage. So little big moments. I know it's Marlon Vera and it's very hard to do anything to him, but it wasn't like Rob Font Marlon Vera, other than when Vera was all over Font, where Font was just piecing him up. It was Sandhagen doing these little flicky shots, and I want Sandhagen to win. I do. I want finishes at bantamweight ever again. Is that so much to ask? I do want a KO finish one time at bantamweight before the end of my days. And I fear if Merab keeps going, we will never see that. Okay? I miss bantamweight striking. I really do. But he will beat Sandhagen. Sandhagen will do better at O'Malley because of his Granby rolls and his submissions and his leg lock game. You know, he's done a lot of work with Ryan Hall and a lot of these specifics and perfectionists in their field. You know, he came up training with TJ Dillashaw, Dwayne Ludwig. So everything he does is very, very fundamentally sound. But he needs to unlock some killer instinct here. Some real killer instinct here. And I don't think reading his Art of War book and writing in his diary about how a flying knee might happen is going to work. Now, maybe he flying knees Merab and I've just jinxed it. That's the chance, right? Big step in knee, big flying knee, something along those lines. But that is so difficult to rely on in order for me to say this guy's going to win, because he's going to land a flying knee. You know? With Zalal, I think he'll land the knee, but I also think he could just win anyway. So I'm just adding on, like, I could see a knee landing later in the fight. But with Sandhagen, it's not enough as a sole factor to, like, Merab's got to watch for that jump knee. I don't see the guillotine threat. I don't see the submission threat really off of the back. I think Merab will just disengage rather than Figueiredo diving on the ground on bottom position. I want Sandhagen to win, but I just don't think his finishing potential is good enough here. I think that if it's close, Merab's moments will take it. His takedowns will take it. His knees to the thigh. And then after about 5 knees to the thigh, Sandhagen will Granby roll over. And Merab will reclaim position, but Sandhagen will be up on the other side on his knee. And maybe get separation and it's back to the feet, but Merab's still on him. I think the body shots of Merab are going to work on the feet. He's going to have to feint the takedown a lot more. I know he's been saying that he's not going to shoot takedowns. I'm not falling for that one again, you fuck. I picked O'Malley like a fucking clown. Yeah. So I think in a way he's a better O'Malley in the fact that he's more sound in his takedown defense, is Sandhagen. But he's not better than O'Malley in terms of how vicious and potent and dangerous he is on the feet. So although he may look better against Merab, he will not have a higher chance of defeating him. I'm going to go with Merab Dvalishvili, 4-1 on rounds. Sandhagen to take a third or a second. Merab will pour on, and once a bit of that energy goes from Sandhagen, I can only imagine the noises as he throws punches. Just real pathetic shit. But I'm going to have to go with Merab for those reasons. So Merab gets this one done. We move on. Ankalaev versus Pereira. Magomed Ankalaev versus Alex Pereira 2. I'm going to go with Magomed Ankalaev. I'm not going to let what I want cloud my opinion and my judgment. I think it is very unlikely. This is all I'll say. It is extremely unlikely that Magomed Ankalaev again goes 0 for 11 on takedowns, or whatever the number was. There was a lot of them that he just didn't get. It's incredibly unlikely that happens again. More unlikely than Alex Pereira finding a KO this time when last time he couldn't. Because I think Pereira did a really good job to stuff the takedowns, but in order to do that, he had to give up danger on the feet. So maybe he will risk maybe getting a first round KO or a second round KO over Ankalaev in order to he'll risk that by maybe focusing on the takedowns less and focusing on stuffing the takedowns a little bit less. But Ankalaev can just hold him up against the cage. Sad part of our sport, but it is there. And not only that, Ankalaev was straight up outboxing him, man. And he has really fast hands and really good boxing, and his kicks are good. And, you know, Jan Blachowicz really did do a number on his legs, but I saw Pereira land so many of those calf kicks, and they just weren't there for Ankalaev. Now, I'm going to try and think of their stances real quick. Alex Pereira's orthodox and Ankalaev's southpaw. And southpaws have given Pereira trouble in the past because Pereira's low kicks are one of his main weapons. Adesanya's also orthodox. So when Pereira was hacking those low kicks, they were rear low kicks, and he was really chopping that calf. Against Ankalaev, he doesn't have the option to really put heavy power into his low kicks. He has to float to outside foot position and use his lead leg to chop the low kicks. And that just isn't as potent, it isn't as vicious, and it isn't as damaging. So I'm going to trust in Ankalaev here. And I like his energy. He ain't scared of Pereira, man. And as much as the fighters maybe don't want to admit it, they are. Yuri was saying this guy had juju in his hands and voodoo, and I don't know what spells he's casting, but this guy, he no magic this time, you know. And all of this. And Yuri was coming up with all of these things, and there is this level that gets into Pereira's head. I think this freak is too inbred for anything to get into his head. You know, logic, reason, anything. You know, like that is maybe the advantage of being this fucking generation upon generation fucking hideous fucking inbred freak. Like there's just, he's not going to fear Alex Pereira like that. Yuri has thoughts. You know what I mean? Like genuine thoughts of like, what happens if I lose this and people around me look at me different? Like there is a part of that. But Ankalaev's just like, fight time, aggression time, not aggression time, home time, goat time. And there's just all of these, there's not that complexity to him. And I think that is such an advantage here because he can just focus on what he needs to do. And he needs to do what he needs to do to win against Alex Pereira. And I think he's going to be able to do it. And I also think we're looking at a finish. I think if he does get that takedown, which I believe he will, we are looking at a finish later in this fight. If Alex Pereira abandons perfection in a takedown defense, which he needs to do in order to give him a chance, a better chance of landing on the feet, I think we'll see Ankalaev get that takedown in round 2 or 3. And I think after that happens, we will see a lot of steam out of Pereira's shots. We will see him a little bit more vulnerable on the feet. And I've seen the clip of round 5 where Pereira's kind of half-assed, walking out to the center of the octagon. So I'm going to have to go with Ankalaev. I'm going to have to go with Ankalaev to get this one done by TKO or submission in round 4 or 5. Championship rounds finish for Ankalaev. His hands are fast, and his defense, I mean, we've got to say it. There has been fighters who have had the defense required to avoid Pereira's shots. Adesanya has managed to pull this off. You know, I mean, in the first fight, he did a great job up until round 5, even though in round 2 he lost it. But he made it so that Pereira couldn't land the devastating ones. You know, the extra devastating shots that are going to put you down. Jan Blachowicz did a really good job of this. Ankalaev's chin, I swear, never raises in his life. He's like the opposite of Tom Aspinall. His chin is permanently, like he's very tucked in, and it's extremely hard to find that chin as he throws. Shoulders high, throws everything off the shoulder, very fast hands. I think he's going to be a problem for Alex Pereira here. And I'm going to say that he finishes him in the championship rounds, unfortunately. I do want Pereira to win because I think it would fix the UFC's problem right now, because we need a big blockbuster main event of the White House. And in order for that to happen, I think the only option is for Pereira to defeat Ankalaev in this rematch, for Tom Aspinall to defeat Cyril Gane next pay-per-view, which I think he's going to do, and for them two to fight each other. Pereira goes for a third belt, and then it also is like, okay, well, who do you go with, Allberg or the winner of Yuri versus Khalil? What you go with is they fight for a vacant belt or an interim belt while Pereira's doing that super fight. Destiny almost makes me believe Pereira will win because of how many problems at like heavyweight and heavyweight when it comes to interest that this will solve. But then let's get into this second part of Pereira. The movies, the films, the Nina drama in there. Ankalaev's a fucking mutant, leaves his cave, goes to train, clockwork every day. Pereira's got to worry about exes cheating on him. You know what I mean? Maybe his family problems go on. Ankalaev's woman ain't saying no to him. You know what I'm saying? That's just kind of how that thing works. There's a big advantage. So I'm going to go with Ankalaev getting this one done. He ain't got no worries but to wake up and trainy, eaty, trainy, sleepy. You heard Makhachev say it before. I'm going to go with Ankalaev to win by finishing the later rounds. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.